Welcome, brave souls, to the heart of fear. I'm Fright Grove, and you're about to step into a world where every whisper, every shadow tells a chilling tale. Tonight's story will haunt your dreams and linger in your thoughts. So, dim the lights, get cozy, and prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown. Are you ready to face the darkness? Let's begin. 3 months ago, I learned of my uncle's passing. We weren't particularly close, but in his will, he left me one of his houses. I was touched, but not prepared for this unexpected responsibility, especially with my new role as a mother of twin girls. Managing another property was the last thing I needed. To expedite the sale, I traveled across the country to stay in the house until the process was complete. Since my job only requires a laptop and a phone, I got approval to work remotely. Unfortunately, my husband couldn't join me because of his own job, so I had to go alone. At first, I treated it like a mini vacation, expecting the sale to take only a week, but things quickly became more complicated than I imagined. Though I had a realtor handling most of the logistics, after a month I was still here. The house was nice enough, but from the beginning, something felt off. I put down my keys only to find them somewhere else later. I catch fleeting shadows from the corner of my eye. Worst of all, I began to lose track of time. I chalked it up to stress and loneliness. Except for the rare visits from the realtor and prospective buyers, the house was the quietest place I'd ever been. The silence was oppressive. Then one day, an elderly neighbor stopped by. She introduced herself as someone who had taken care of my uncle's dog, Buster, while he was in the hospital. Now that I was here, she thought I should take him. I love dogs and was happy for the company. Buster, a golden retriever, was exactly the comfort I needed. I even thought he'd be a great companion for my daughters once I got home. But something strange happened. The neighbor seemed confused, acting as if my uncle had passed only a week ago, not 3 months. I brushed it off as forgetfulness. Buster quickly settled in, but something bothered me. He refused to go upstairs. Every time I tried to coax him up, he resisted. I wasn't too concerned at first. I figured it would make him easier to keep an eye on. Then one day, Buster disappeared. I searched the house from top to bottom, calling his name. I checked the yard, the garage, everywhere I could think of. It was strange. Buster had no way to escape, and I hadn't left any doors open, but he was gone. I spent hours searching, becoming more frantic as time passed. My only companion, my only tether to reality, had vanished without a trace. Exhausted, I collapsed on the living room couch, hoping Buster would return on his own. But something inside me felt off, like a deep pit in my stomach I couldn't shake. That night I barely slept. The house was too quiet, unnaturally so. Every creak of the floorboards or whisper of the wind outside made my skin crawl. Around 2 a.m., I heard a low growl from upstairs. It was faint but unmistakable. Buster. Relief flooded me and I leapt out of bed calling his name. But when I reached the foot of the stairs, I froze. Buster was standing at the top of the stairs, his back arched, teeth bared, growling at the darkness behind him. His fur stood on end and his eyes locked onto something I couldn't see. My heart raced as I followed his gaze, but the hallway beyond him was empty. I slowly approached the stairs, whispering his name, trying to calm him down. His growl deepened, but he didn't move. As I got closer, the air around me felt heavier, colder. A chill ran down my spine and I stopped in my tracks, instinctively knowing something was very, very wrong. Then just as suddenly as it started, Buster stopped growling. He turned and bolted down the stairs, his tail tucked between his legs, and ran past me into the living room, hiding under the couch. I stared at the top of the stairs, my pulse pounding in my ears. I couldn't explain what had just happened, but I knew I wasn't alone in the house. For the rest of the night, I sat in the living room with Buster, keeping every light on, my eyes darting to the stairs every few minutes. Sleep was impossible. The next day, I called my realtor, desperate to get out of this house. I didn't care how long it took to sell it anymore. I just needed to leave. But when I tried to tell her what had happened, the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain something I didn't understand myself? She assured me that a new buyer would be coming to see the house in 2 days. I decided I would tough it out until then, but my mind kept replaying Buster's growl and the oppressive feeling from the night before. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was trying to keep me here. That night, as I lay in bed, the air felt thick again. I listened closely, my senses on high alert, and then I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. My heart pounded in my chest as I lay perfectly still, straining to hear the footsteps. They were slow, almost deliberate, as if someone or something was taking their time walking through the upstairs hallway. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The oppressive silence of the house was now punctuated by these unsettling sounds. I decided to get up and investigate. My legs felt like lead as I tiptoed toward the stairs, each step a struggle against the rising fear. I glanced over at Buster, who had crawled out from under the couch and was now cowering beside me, his body trembling. I reached the base of the stairs and hesitated, the darkness above almost tangible. The footsteps continued, echoing softly in the eerie quiet. I called out, trying to sound confident. "Hello? Is someone there?" No response, just the continued steady cadence of those footsteps. With a deep breath, I began to climb the stairs, each step seeming to creak louder than the last. I glanced back at Buster, who was still following me with anxious eyes. His usual boldness had vanished, replaced by a fearful submission. When I reached the top, the footsteps stopped abruptly. I peered into the darkness of the upstairs hallway, but I could see nothing. The air was heavy and the temperature had dropped significantly. I reached for the light switch, my hand shaking. The light flickered on, casting weak illumination down the hallway. I walked slowly, my eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. The house seemed to hold its breath, the silence now deafening. I called out again, "Is anyone here?" The only answer was the soft hum of the house's old electrical system. I made my way to each room, checking closets, under beds, and behind furniture. But the footsteps had vanished, and there was no sign of anyone or anything out of the ordinary. I felt a wave of frustration and fear. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this all just my imagination, a product of stress and isolation? Or was there something truly sinister lurking in this house? I decided to return downstairs, my nerves frayed. As I walked back, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The oppressive silence had returned, but it was now more suffocating than before. I hurried down, nearly stumbling in my haste, and collapsed onto the couch, pulling Buster close. The rest of the night was a restless blur. Every creak and groan of the house kept me on edge. I felt trapped, as if the house itself were holding me prisoner. The next morning, I was exhausted, but determined to get out of there. I called my realtor again, urging her to expedite the sale process. I couldn't stay in that house another night. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't help but glance at the stairs one last time. The house felt different now, almost as if it was aware of my departure. I grabbed my bags and headed out, Buster trotting beside me, relieved to be leaving as well. When I finally drove away, I looked back at the house in my rearview mirror. It stood there, silent and foreboding, a dark presence that seemed to watch me leave. I was glad to be away, but a part of me wondered if I'd ever truly escape its shadow. I never went back. The house sold within the week, and I never learned what happened to it or to those who moved in after me. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something was left behind, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander through its doors. As the days went by, I tried to put the experience behind me and focus on my family and work. But the unsettling memories of that house lingered, especially the feeling that I had left something unresolved. Buster adapted well to his new home, and the girls loved him. Still, every now and then, I would catch myself glancing over my shoulder or double-checking the locks at night. Months passed and life settled back into its usual rhythm. One evening, while going through old papers, I came across a box of my uncle's belongings that I hadn't unpacked. Curious, I began sorting through it, hoping to find something that might shed light on his life or perhaps explain the strange occurrences in the house. Among the papers and trinkets, I found a small, worn journal. Its cover was leather, and the pages were yellowed with age. I opened it, hoping for insights into my uncle's life. But instead of mundane entries, the journal was filled with strange notes and cryptic observations. One entry caught my eye. The house has a way of holding on to its secrets. Sometimes I feel like it's aware of me, watching me as I move through its rooms. There's a presence here, one that's older than the house itself. It doesn't like to be disturbed, and it shows itself in ways you can't ignore. I shivered as I read the passage. My uncle's words echoed my own experiences, adding a chilling validation to what I had felt. I flipped through more pages, finding similar entries about strange noises, fleeting shadows, and a growing sense of unease. The journal hinted at a history of inexplicable events tied to the house, a history my uncle had evidently been too frightened to fully disclose. Another entry mentioned an old neighbor who had lived nearby for decades and was known for her strange behavior. My heart skipped a beat as I remembered the elderly woman who had given me Buster. The journal described her as someone who had a deep connection with the house and who seemed to know more than she let on. Feeling a sense of urgency, I decided to do some research on this neighbor. After a few phone calls and online searches, I discovered that she had lived in the area for a long time, but had recently moved away. I tracked down her new address and, after some hesitation, decided to visit her. When I arrived at her new home, she greeted me with a look of recognition, as if she had been expecting me. Stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for joining me on this eerie adventure. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a spine-tingling story. Share your thoughts in the comments and let me know what scares you the most. Until next time, stay curious and keep the lights on.